Welcome to 4TG. Hello everyone and welcome back to 4TG, the podcast keeping more girls and women in sport. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. It has been a hot minute since we've done a solo episode here on 4TG, but there is something very significant coming up this weekend that I'm both excited by and a little bit riled up by at the same time. So we're going to dig deep today into the historic AFLW Australia vs Ireland representative match, which will be held at 4:15 at North Sydney Oval. Now, this match is significant for a number of reasons. First of all, it's historic. It's the inaugural Australia vs Ireland representative match at the professional level. It is also sold out, and that part makes me extremely angry. It sold out within a week or so, and the sellout is absolutely fantastic because it proves that people are excited and want to watch this match. But the problem is that AFL is not giving us the venue that we deserve to house such a historic match. And this isn't a once-off. This is happening again and again in women's footy. We see it year and year again with the AFLW Grand Final constantly selling out within the first couple of days, but yet there is no solution to address the fact that we are still housed within these small boutique stadiums instead of being upgraded to larger stadiums that can host more people, therefore generate more money in terms of ticket sales, provide more exposure to these athletes, and grow the community of fans around women's sport. Now, today's topic is particularly of interest to me, mainly because I have been lucky enough to play Gaelic football when I lived in Glasgow, and I obviously am playing VFLW here in Australia. So it's kind of like both of my worlds colliding, which I absolutely love, and I have been trying to promote it amongst everyone as much as I can, amongst friends, family, and Damo from the Prune Masters and I had an event on Saturday night at the Toorak Hotel, which was a curtain raiser for this event and created a good buzz around the event to come with a few Irish and Aussie activities. Obviously, the Aussies won that because I'm actually a little bit scared that the Irish are going to beat us this weekend, but may the best team win. And yeah, it was great crack, as the Irish say. So the more that we can promote events like this, which are historic in nature, is only going to benefit women's sports in the long run. So today, let's get into not only the history of this game that's coming up on Saturday, but the undeniable Irish influence on the AFLW and the layers that they bring to our sport. But most importantly, we're going to touch on this stadium problem that is really holding women's football back and nobody at the top seems to want to fix. So first of all, let's look at why this game on the weekend matters. This match is monumental because yes, it is the first AFLW representative fixture that we've had since 2017, which is 9 years ago, when Victoria played the Allies in a one-off game featuring many of the competition's inaugural stars. But since then, we've had nothing. No representative football, no international clash for 9 years in the AFLW. The men, however, have played international rules dating back to 1984. They haven't played a match for quite some time now since COVID, but for the women to play their first match in 2026, it's definitely fair to say that we are decades behind, especially due to the sheer interest and number of Irish players that we have in the AFLW. So how this match is going to be played, unlike the traditional AFL international rules, which used the round Gaelic ball, this match is going to be using the Australian football rules using the classic Sharon. Now, this is a big win for the Aussie team because personally, I could not kick the round Gaelic ball to save my life. It would always curve in untoward angles, and I don't know why. So I think that is already a win for us. And I think, again, we're going to need all the help we can get. So what is truly exciting within this match is the stacked sides that we have. Literally the very best in Australia coming together to face off against the best in Ireland, who are also some of the best players that we have in the competition. We have reigning best and fairest Ash Riddell, we have Chloe Malloy, we have Mon Conti, just to name a few in the Aussie team. And the Irish squad, also very significant. We have your Vicky Walls, your Blacking Bogues, your Sarah Rose, Orla Dwyers, some massive names all coming together. And it is going to be an absolutely incredible match to watch. The Irish squad is also being coached by Sydney Swans senior coach Colin O'Riordan, who is the first Irish person to hold a senior coaching role at AFL or AFLW level. What is also significant with this match are the conversations happening in parallel at the AFL level about whether an Irish team could eventually join the AFLW competition as the 20th team when Tasmania joins the competition in 2028. So Eddie Maguire has currently raised this publicly in May 2026, saying that there was a, air quote, genuine desire at the AFL level to make this happen. This is not nothing. This is potentially the most exciting structural development in women's football in years. Now let's look at the Irish influence on AFLW and the competition since its inception. There is no denying that the Irish athletes have had a massive and profound impact on the AFLW. Their speed, their athleticism, and their ability to absolutely take the ball and run with it has opened up our game so significantly that I argue there will always be an appetite to have these Irish athletes in our competition years and years from now. Currently, there are 46 Irish players active in the AFLW, and there are also more than 30 others who have played at the AFLW level previously. So in a competition of around 18 clubs with rosters of roughly 30 players each, this is a genuinely significant cohort. And these players aren't just bench warmers. We're talking about players who come from Gaelic football, which is an entirely different sport, although there are some commonalities, and they've learned Australian rules from scratch and become not only players, but absolute stars of our game. If you look at names like your Blachin Bogue and Sarah Rowe, who's been here for ages, and Vicky Wall, these are some of the biggest names coming from Gaelic football coming over to our competition. These names are literally game changers. They are fan favourites, and they have been crucial to their team success. The AFLW, however, does. So I think it's also important to understand the appetite behind why a lot of the Irish women come over here to play AFLW. So Gaelic football back in Ireland is still amateur in status in that it does not offer contracts or pay salaries. Instead, it covers a few things like travel expenses, and there are some in-kind benefits offered and state government funding as well. But the AFLW does offer contracts and salaries. So it's a better financial deal for Gaelic players to come over and play AFLW, as well as the AFLW having more coaching infrastructure, better facilities, and let's be real, better weather. So a lot of the Irish women are leaving behind their families, they're leaving behind their communities, and they are leaving behind the sport they grew up to come here and play football. Now, what I think we really take for granted is that these are some of the biggest names in Gaelic football that we are poaching to AFLW. The GAA must absolutely hate AFLW because we are ringing them of all of their best talent, but I don't feel particularly sorry for them because, again, you need to start paying your athletes what they deserve. So the AFLW has been a lot of Irish women's pathway to professional sport, and my word, have they made the most of it. Which is why this match, it's not just a novelty or a historic first match. When Ashley Maloney puts on an Irish jersey and lines up against Georgie Prasparkas, her Geelong teammate, on Saturday, that is a genuinely complex and interesting story. Two women who train together every day, representing opposite ends of football and an opposite ends of the world, that have shaped this entire competition. And also looking at Colin O'Riordan coaching Ireland while working as a senior coach at the Sydney Swans, this story is one of the most unique things that Australian football has ever produced. And that's why we need to see it as more than just a game. This is truly a celebration of a vital cultural exchange that has absolutely elevated our league. We're bringing together two nations into one sport. And the larger impact that that has on Australia and Ireland is huge. But there always seems to be a but with women's sports and these big events. Now, the elephant in the room is the sellout. So North Sydney Oval has a capacity of approximately 16,000 people. For this event, it was configured for around 8,000 to 10,000 fans. Now, as of a couple of weeks ago, the match completely sold out. There is already a Ticketmaster waitlist, and more than 8,000 fans were already confirmed before the waitlist had even opened. So the reasons for this were, one, that the tickets were priced very accessibly, right? $25 for an adult, $15 for youth, $5 for children, or $50 for a family of four. And now they are all gone. The AFL's response was not to move the match to the SCG, which has a larger capacity to hold more people, their response was to host more watch parties. So they've set up a few venues across Sydney and one in Melbourne, which is at the W Club, which we absolutely love. So if you didn't get tickets, please go down to the W Club if you are in Melbourne. And don't get me wrong, watch parties, like, that's a lovely idea. And the more people watching, the better. But they are not a substitute for a seat at the game. They are a consolation prize when the main event was undersold. And the problem with this happening is that it's not a one-off. It's a pattern that is happening every single year. AFLW grand finals have sold out consecutively since 2023. And this is happening while we have larger venues who can hold more people, who can generate larger ticket sales and have a greater community around these large events, sitting there completely unused. So when the AFL puts an AFLW game of this stature at, say, a Marvel Stadium, or God forbid the MCG, I can guarantee that crowds are going to show up. But when they put it at a smaller ground and it sells out, and then they say, wow, look how popular women's football is, it's not doing anything for the game. It's capping us. It's putting a false ceiling on how popular the game is and disallowing people and fans to show up. But popularity and accessibility, they're not the same thing. You can't claim the demand is there and also refuse to give it a venue that meets that demand. So as Marnie Vinyl rightly pointed out on an Instagram reel recently, the AFLW is so set on boutique stadiums for the AFLW, and players are saying that it's limiting the game. She notes that 11 out of the 28 AFLW venues were rated as substandard or boutique with limited growth potential. So don't get me wrong, North Sydney Oval is a beautiful ground. It has history, it has a great hill to sit down and watch the game on, but for a match of this magnitude, the first AFLW international representative fixture, which is being broadcast live on Fox Footy, on KO Sports and Binge, North Sydney Oval is way too small. This match deserved to be moved to the SCG. It deserved to be in a Marvel-sized stadium. In my humble opinion, it should have been at the MCG. I mean, look at the Irish population who live here in Australia. I think we could have easily filled that. But above all else, it deserved a venue that said, we believe that this many people are coming because we believe in this product and we're ready for them. Laura Kane, who is the AFL Executive General Manager of AFLW, said after the sellout that the sellout reflects excitement fans have for representative football on the AFLW stage. And she's absolutely right, but that excitement was always there. It's not new. We knew that it was coming. I mean, tickets were $25. Of course they're going to sell out. So the question is not whether women's football is popular enough, because we know it is. History has repeated itself year and year again. The real question is why AFL is still surprised by how popular women's footy is and why they keep responding to this popularity by having watch parties instead of offering bigger stadiums where we can get more fans in, more crowds, more ticket sales, more live atmosphere, and just a better reception for these athletes who deserve all of the above. And here's the thing that frustrates me the most about this. We look at this sellout as a success for women's sport, a success for women's football and the popularity around it. When in reality, this sellout is a failure because we have turned away thousands of people who would have paid money to be at the game, to watch their heroes, who would have posted live stories of themselves at the game and created greater exposure around it because we would not give this historic match the venue and the respect that it deserves. The broadcast reach of this game is going to be enormous because we have free air, meaning that there were no other men's games being broadcasted at the same time, but also the live audience could have been enormous too. We chose to have 16,000 instead of, say, 40,000, and yet we're going to hide behind that and call that a success. That is not a success. That is yet another failure and another ceiling placed on women's sport. So we need to stop calling sellouts a victory when in reality, they are a failure of planning. It is time for the AFLW to lift that ceiling and to let women's footy soar by giving it the venue it deserves to thrive. So if we look at now what needs to change, well, the first thing is that the AFL needs to make a commitment. AFLW marquee events should get marquee venues, not as a trial, not as a one-off, as a standard practice. The Australia vs Ireland match, the AFLW Grand Finals, and the State of Origin, if it ever comes, and it absolutely should, these games deserve a 40,000 plus capacity venues with the infrastructure and the promotion to match it. And if the concern is filling a bigger stadium, well, then price the tickets accordingly. I think that the ticket prices for this match on Saturday were pretty bang on. $25 for an adult and $5 for a child. Most people can afford that. So that meant that it was accessible to everyone. If you keep charging those prices, you will fill a bigger ground. You have no excuse. Think about it like this. If you are building a successful business, you don't intentionally limit your growth. You scale up to meet that demand. The AFL is running a multi-million-dollar enterprise, but yet they're treating their fastest growing product like it's a pop-up shop. It is absolutely illogical, and frankly, it's quite insulting to the players and to the fans. So the Irish team scenario, the potential 20th team, is genuinely excited, and I hope it happens. But if we can't even house 16,000 fans at the existing showcase events, we aren't ready to be talking about expanding the competition internationally. We need to get our house in order first before we start looking internationally. So if you're in Sydney this Saturday and managed to get a ticket, I did, I was one of the lucky ones, be sure to get there early. Make noise, buy plenty of pies and drinks, and show the AFL what they're missing. And if you were like the thousands who didn't get a ticket, go to those watch parties listed on the AFLW website. Host your own watch party. If you're in Melbourne, go to the W Club. It is a pub that is designed for women's sport specifically and run by two absolute legends. So go down and support. But if you can't go to a watch party, at the very least, put it on TV. And don't just watch it. It's not enough to just watch it. Make your voice heard. Tag the AFL, tag the AFLW, tag your club, tag all of the players who are playing, and tell all of these people and these clubs and these leagues that you want bigger stadiums for women's footy. We need to make noise, and we need to make it consecutively. That is the only way things are going to change. And that is the only way we're going to ensure that we have bigger venues for these marquee events in the future that allows women's footy to keep growing. So I'm not asking the AFL to do something particularly hard. I'm just asking for them to plan for the demand that they already know exists. You have 46 Irish players in the competition. You have a sold-out international fixture. You have a potential 20th team on the horizon. Let's start acting like it. Give us the venues, and if we don't fill them, we'll then drop us back to the smaller venues. Stop making excuses and start building the future of footy one venue at a time. But in conclusion, Saturday is genuinely a very historic moment for sport, for women's sport, and for Australia and Ireland. And I don't want this stadium conversation to take away from that. This is the very first time ever in the AFLW competition that players have had the chance to represent their country. Now, that is something worth celebrating, and that is something that I hope those players are feeling extremely proud of. I am personally very excited to say that I'll be there to watch the first match, and I hope that there will be a match every single year. I also hope that eventually it will be a test series where there are 3 games. I'm thinking one in Sydney, one in Croke Park in Dublin, and one at the MCG in Melbourne. That's just my thoughts. Very open for suggestions and feedback. However, I think that would be a brilliant thing to do because I want to go and watch it in Dublin in Croke Park. But while we can be excited about this step forward in women's football and women's sport, it doesn't mean that we need to pretend that everything's perfect. We can be excited about this match and still say we should have had more seats. We can acknowledge the incredible impact the Irish have had on our competition and still say that those players deserve a bigger stage. We can also love the sport and still hold the people running it to a higher standard. It doesn't mean that we are ungrateful. It just means that we love our sport, that we want to see women's sport grow and thrive, and we need the venues and the commitment from the people running AFLW to allow that to happen. And that is what 4TG is here for. We will continue telling the stories that don't get enough spotlight in mainstream media, and we'll continue promoting women's sport and the people in it so that more girls and women stay in sport, because the lessons that we learn in sport go far beyond the field. That is all for me today. If today's episode resonated with you, please be sure to share it. Share it across your social media, send the link to your friends, your family, anyone who needs to hear it, because we need to gain more awareness for women's sport, and this is how we do it. Please also be sure to subscribe to 4TG on YouTube, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to support the show, head to Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in the show notes. Thank you very much for tuning in, and go Australia. I'll see you all next week. This one was brought to you by Project Better.